Welcome back, survivor. If you can hear this, it means you're still alive. This is Jack's Nightmares, and this is your next story. I did not understand the scale at first. News feeds went from crowded to blank over one long watch. At sea, silence comes in slow layers, not like a switch. We were on station near Hawaii for a training cycle when the first civilian network started looping emergency banners without anchors on screen. The watch team kept refreshing and saw the same lower thirds roll again and again without a human voice. Military traffic lagged the panic by a day. Messages got short, then coded, then inconsistent. We heard 3 different headquarters issue 2 different sets of guidance within an hour. After that, our encrypted windows opened on time but carried nothing. You learn to count silence in hours, and then in days. By the end of the first week, the radio room sounded like insulation. No chatter, no crosstalk, only the ship. Honolulu went dark in steps. First, the airport stopped vectoring. Then the harbor authority repeated the same berth assignments without humans answering follow-ups. We sent a helicopter to the shoreline for a visual. The pilot circled, called out wrecks on the main highway, then trailed off in the middle of a sentence and switched to numbers only. The video feed showed cars stacked against barriers and people clustered on roofs waving sheets. Some waved, some did not. Movement on the ground concentrated around noise. We learned that rule early and never forgot it. Engines brought walking dead like a magnet, and gunfire multiplied it. A lone siren somewhere in the city pulled a line of bodies down a street like iron filings. We shut the feed off and switched to maps. On the carrier, we kept routine as if it were hull plating. Colors at sunrise, engineering rounds every hour, reactor watch reliefs on the minute. The air wing briefed, launched, trapped and debriefed on time even when the mission was to photograph empty water. The admiral told us that order would carry the bridge while the world figured itself out. For a while, men and women believed him because the ship still ran, and the ocean looked the same. A month in, belief cracked. We rescued 2 civilians from a yacht that drifted within view and brought them aboard on a back ladder. They lasted 3 days before the medical team pulled them aside for quarantine because one coughed blood. The woman died on day 5. The man turned on day 6 and tore at the plastic curtain until the Marines ended it through the screen. We double-bagged both and slid them over the side at dusk. That moment erased the idea that we were waiting for a weather break. We were not in a storm. We were in a new map. When the island stopped answering completely, we shifted to survival. The admiral stopped pretending he had a tasking. He said it plain over the one main circuit. The ship and her people mattered, and we would act like a fleet of one until we found a human voice that matched the codes. We set a search box and ran it for 2 months. We found only wrecks and a few boats pretending to be stranded until they tried to board us. The Marines kept them off with loud hailers and warning bursts into water. Those nights put a hard edge on everyone. People who had never fired on anything living learned a kind of steady hand that does not leave you. Fuel for aircraft became the choke point fast. We had a lot, but flight hours burned through a lot faster than people imagine when you add warm-ups and spares. We cut sorties to bare recon and medical evac only. The flight deck crews adjusted instincts built over years. No wasted taxi, no show moves. The arresting gear crews babied cable tensioners like nurses with incubators. Small things became the difference between operations and drift. A half degree on a valve. 1 extra set of hands in a catwalk during a tie-down in rough water. Electrical tape keeping a headset alive for 1 more trap. We stripped 2 aircraft for parts to keep 4 flying. Seeing a jet gutted in the hangar gave some sailors the shakes. For me, it read as proof we could still adapt. We made the call to look for a shore base when food showed numbers that made your stomach drop. Bulk staples held, but fresh stores were gone. Hydroponics on board could not scale fast enough. You can keep a ship steady on procedures, but you cannot feed men and women on spreadsheets. The admiral stood in front of the ready room whiteboard and pointed to 3 options. Try to return to the mainland and risk fuel, storms, and ports that look dead. Keep circling until the last pallet ran out and accept that option 2 ends us in the water, or pick a defensible shore facility, lock it down, and build a lifeline between steel and land. He did not raise his voice. He never did. We voted with our eyes. Every officer in that room stared at the chart of the coastline, with the old Navy base marked in pencil. Getting ashore took a week of quiet work. We ran drones over the base day and night and drew patterns of movement. We tagged hotspots where infected gathered and sketched lanes where they did not. We learned that flocks of birds told the truth before cameras did. No birds meant recent gunfire or smoke. Too many birds meant bodies you could not see yet. We used both signals. On insertion day, 2 helicopters moved at tree height with Marines clipped in and gear tight. We did not broadcast anything. No flags, no music, no announcements. We took buildings one by one, checked floors, checked closets, checked crawl spaces, and did not let adrenaline write the plan. We found 3 stragglers in the admin block who had been living on canned corn and hot plate coffee. They could barely say their names through cracked lips. We wrapped them in blankets and held them outside the fence for quarantine. We were not cruel about it. We were careful. The base looked dead at first glance and useful at second. The piers were intact but leaned in places where storm and rust worked together. The warehouses had dry roofs. The motor pool had tools under tarps that had kept sun off just enough. We pulled a generator apart and found it could turn with a little oil and a lot of patience. We wired a floodlight line along the inner road and saw the place come back to life inch by inch. The first night, a dozen infected pressed the fence near the gate because of the new sound and the smell of people. The Marines did not empty magazines. They aimed and waited and only fired when a face pushed between chain links. It was ugly without being a show. We logged every round and went back to loading boxes. We had civilians outside the wire by the end of week 3. Not many. Families who had been hiding in basements during the heat of the fall. Older couples who had figured out how to trap rain in barrels and eat fish when the algae did not bloom. They came with hands held up and faces that looked 10 years older than the calendar said. We set a camp in the old ball field across from the command offices and laid out rules on a board. 72-hour quarantine in tents, wash station at the gate, no weapons inside the inner fence, and a process for intake that did not let hunger outrun reason. We measured kids for shoes and asked parents where they had been sleeping. The most important question for adults was simple: do you understand our rules? People who nodded and did not argue usually meant it. People who argued with everything would find a way to break something later. We learned to spot both kinds and place them where they could do the least harm. The disease wave that came later was not the original infection, which turned death into movement. This one was a common respiratory illness that became lethal because we lived close. It hit during a cold snap. Cough spread fast through tents and into the old barracks because one person took off a mask to sip soup and forgot to put it back on. The ward filled in 2 days. Oxygen ran thin. Antibiotics went to worse cases, and you could feel the pressure of triage like a hand on the back of your neck. The medical staff set up plastic curtains and ran fans backward to make quick negative pressure rooms. But the virus did not care about our effort. People died, some reanimated. That was the tightest corner we have ever fought through inside the wire. Marines who had just served chow went right back to rifles and cleared small rooms where 5 minutes earlier nurses had worked. We burned buildings that week, whole buildings. We did not debate with flames inside walls. We pulled everyone out, dragged equipment into the street, and put a torch to dry plywood. Smoke coated the inside of my mouth for days. When the fire finally died, the base looked smaller and safe. Our numbers fell to just above 500. That count included Marines, sailors, aircrew, firefighters, former police officers, machinists, teachers, cooks, children, and elderly men and women who could shell peas faster than any machine we could rig. That mix mattered as much as the count. 100 former soldiers cannot make a base run without the woman who knows how to keep the generator carburetor clean, or the man who can fix a pump with a wall clock spring and some tape. We wrote those names on a board and put a star by each one with a skill we could not replace easily. Council called them critical. We protected them without saying so. Leadership changed during that bad season. Admiral Cross went into sickbay one evening and did not come out again. He asked for a pen first and wrote a note on a page he had torn from his own log. "Leave me in peace. Do not let me walk. Keep the rules." He named a temporary officer to keep the watch until the settlement could decide. He did not want a crown to pass by rank alone. We held a vote 2 weeks later after the funerals ended. I did not want it. I said as much. The room did not care what I wanted. They wanted someone who would not pretend. Someone who would count food in public, call quarantine without blinking, and explain every use of force without drama. I won by a margin that felt like a burden. The council wrote the charter with me standing in the doorway. Clear lines of authority, emergency powers clocked in hours, not weeks, and audits after every hard call. Rules settled into place because we used them every day. Quarantine for anyone coming back from shore outside our fence. 72 hours always. No exceptions for rank or for tiers. People who broke quarantine faced hard penalties, because that mistake kills a lot more people later. Sabotage of water or power counted as a capital crime, and everyone knew it. We posted those lines in the chow hall next to the duty roster. 2 or 3 times a month we enforced them where everyone could see. No speeches. Evidence, verdict, sentence, carried out at dawn with council witnesses and the chaplain there to speak a few clean words. I hated every one of those mornings. I did them anyway, because mercy without discipline turns into guilt with graves. The base itself changed shape with each month. We doubled the fence and added angled skirts to stop climbers. We mounted lights on poles we scrounged from the parking lots and ran timers so the whole place did not glow like a beacon all night. We dug chicanes at the gates with broken jersey barriers and turned 2 old buses into movable roadblocks. A welder with a calm face and a steady hand built brackets for the light armor plates we bolted to our patrol trucks. Kids painted names on the plates with house paint because names matter when you roll out into streets that still hold teeth. Bluebird, Lucky 4, Mop. I did not ask about that last one. The name made the crew smile, and that counts for more than a perfect explanation. Power came from a mix we never planned for in school. Diesel generators ran the backbone when we had fuel. A line from the carrier through a transformer yard fed us on scheduled nights to keep battery banks topped off. We hacked together wind microturbines from ship parts and stacked batteries from dead electric cars we found in garages that still smelled like new plastic. The math never relaxed. We watched usage down to the 10th and shut down non-essentials without drama. The laundry shed got hand cranks and used heat waste from the generator exhaust to dry clothes. Nothing pretty. It worked. Water meant everything. The diesel unit was our crown. We shielded it with steel and posted guards around it even when the rest of the base felt quiet. We maintained a second unit in reserve and cannibalized parts to keep both alive. Rivera talked to those pumps like they understood him. He would sit on a milk crate with a wrench in one hand and run a finger along a gasket as if reading a line of text. We built a small grey water loop for irrigation and taught civilians to wash in a sequence that wasted nothing. Those dull lessons saved more lives than 1,000 rounds of ammunition. Food came from everywhere. Nets on the inner pier filled with fish at night when the floodlights drew small fry and larger shapes rose from black water. Greenhouses in the motor pool grew greens and herbs. We built raised beds in shipping pallets and taught people to compost in sealed bins, so the smell did not do our enemy's job for them. We smoked fish and meat in a shed that vented through a pipe pointed at the ocean to confuse the scent trail. Rations went out by coupons. We posted counts and taught every kid to read numbers, as if numbers were a language and not just a class. When someone stole, we did not talk about good or bad. We talked about next week's hunger. That lands better than shame. Aviation shrank to what we could service. 2 helicopters stayed alive with parts hauled from 3 dead airframes. The men and women who kept those birds spinning did work that made you stop and look. They used wire from toaster coils to fix a cracked heater, cut seals from rubber boot soles, and turned a bay of the hangar into a clean bench with curtains so dust could not settle on hard parts. We saved 1 jet for long photo runs. Every flight of that jet burned a piece of our future. We used it anyway when the information mattered. The pilot walked the deck slower after each landing. He knew his fuel gauge like I know the faces that make this place human. The carrier remained our anchor. Her lights at night told everyone within 5 miles that we were not a rumor. She gave us radar and a fallback if the worst happened. She also drew eyes. Raiders saw a treasure on the water and wanted to peel it. We answered with rules. No boat inside the buoy line with weapons. Engines off at the swap point. 1 boat at a time. When a flotilla tried to push that line, we put engine-killing rounds into their hulls and then rescued them from their own bad choices. We ran tribunals that sounded like court and not like vengeance. Work detail on the breakwater. Internment for those who would not sign terms. Parole for crews that proved they could live inside law. That cycle built a wall in people's heads as valuable as steel walls on land. Word spreads. You get a reputation. In this new world, reputation moves faster than any vehicle. Information stayed muddy and dangerous. The Harbor Command broadcast started early and never stopped. Strong voices that sounded like uniforms promised safe docks and medical care. The coordinates always pointed to tight inlets, with clean fields of fire on rooftops and streets blocked with cars that left one lane open like a mouth. We answered with cameras in the sky. Drones launched from the destroyer lifted up and recorded men practicing waves with white cloth and rifles behind tarps. We jammed the signals with a tone and a clear warning in simple words. This is a trap. Turn around. Some listened. Others did not. The ones who did not became part of a pile that others would learn from. Everyone learns. The question is how big the class size gets before the lesson sticks. Death inside the wire was quieter in year 2, but it did not leave. An auxiliary with a torn glove in the wrong room. A guard who tripped and cut a knee on a rusty edge and did not tell anyone because she did not want to lose a shift. A kid who found an old needle in a clinic and thought it was a toy. We ran drills that felt too simple to save anyone. They saved people anyway. Bleach station at every gate. Hand washing with a song so kids hit the seconds. Weekly briefings in plain talk. If it sounded like school, it stuck. If it sounded like a sermon, it slid right off. Discipline without cruelty became our mark. When water lines were cut, we found the man who did it and held a hearing where evidence spoke first and opinion waited its turn. When a fight broke out in the chow line and a man pulled a knife, 2 Marines put him on the ground with a shoulder and a twist, and he spent a month hauling sand for the flood berm. When someone came to the gate with a toddler and a story that ended in smoke, we found a way to feed both and still keep the quarantine clock running. The hardest part of command is saying yes with limits. The second hardest part is saying no with explanation. We kept both tools sharp. The schoolhouse surprised me. It grew from a tent behind the greenhouse into a proper building inside 4 months because people pushed. A former teacher named Rowe found a stack of old readers and sanded desks until the varnish stopped flaking. The kids carried chalkboards and wrote rules about recess and bathroom lines that made me want to sit and watch for a while. A guard posted outside on rotation like it was a bank vault. In a way it was. The most valuable thing left was what you could teach a child without scaring the child out of being a child. Rowe taught math with screws and dice, geography with fishing maps, history with simple dates and the names of parents. She banned hero talk and told stories about teams. Good rule. We kept a ledger that went farther back than any radio signal did. The chaplain and I updated it together at night when the air got cold and the lights turned dim. Names of the dead in one column, cause in another, place in a third. At first the notes crammed the margins. Fever, fall, breach, raid. Later the notes thinned. That felt like breathing after a long run. A few new lines still hit hard. A man who walked past the safe lines at dusk and did not see a quiet infected crouched behind a dumpster. A woman who lost focus along the dock and stepped into water without anyone noticing until it was too late. We learned from each line and changed one practice to block the next one. We moved the dusk line to a brighter place. We put a rope along the water's edge. We accepted that error shrinks but never goes away. We started to plan far out for the first time since the fall. Not months, seasons. Seed varieties that fit soil we mapped with our hands. Rotation schedules that rested dirt and rested people. Garden rows to keep roots deep. Fishing limits written on a chalkboard that crews signed before leaving the pier. Training cycles for quick reaction teams that mirrored old Navy calendars but with fewer shiny parts. The carrier commander and I built a plan to take her out for a hard spin once a quarter to keep men sharp and plants from thinking the world had stopped. The deck crew thanked me afterwards with a bag of coffee that tasted like metal and memory. We made jokes that had dust on them. It felt right. The wider world remained a wall we looked at and rarely climbed. Once in a while we heard a burst on a frequency that matched old keys, then nothing else. Once we picked up an inland signal that repeated a string of numbers with correct parity checks, which raised the hair on the comms tech's arms. We sent a query in code and waited a day. No answer. On long nights, I imagined some bunker with a person hunched over a board waiting for a reply that our antenna could not reach. That kind of thinking sends you in circles. I learned to write unknown on the whiteboard and circle it with a dry marker. That little ring kept hope from bleeding into plans where it did not belong. We let people leave if they insisted, not all at once, in controlled ways that did not endanger the rest. A week of rations, one rifle, a boat if water was the path, and a clear line to follow that kept them off our patrol zones. We asked for one person back with the boat. Sometimes that happened. A tired woman with windburned cheeks returning alone, whispering that the people she went to find were gone. Sometimes the boat did not return. We folded that truth into the day and kept working. You cannot build a place on chained legs. You build it with earned loyalty and open gates that do not swing freely. Hard balance. Worth it. On clear mornings, I stand at the pier and look at the carrier's profile. The island stacks up against the sky, and I can count stories by shapes without needing numbers. The deck crews move like a language everybody on land understands again now. Chocks and chains, fuel lines, hand signals. None of it dramatic. All of it alive. On land, a welder arcs a flash and then flicks the hood up. A guard walks a fence line and kicks a rock off the gravel because small rocks turn ankles. A medic holds a thermometer and waits 30 seconds without fidgeting. A kid drags chalk across asphalt to draw a line only kids will walk. That is our new world. Not empty, not loud. Busy in a way that keeps breath steady and food near, and the walking dead outside. When I took this job, I thought command was about pointing. Now I know it is about keeping count and explaining why the count matters. It is about catching yourself when you want to yell, and choosing to write a checklist instead. It is about that ugly hour at dawn when a sentence ends a life so other lives can go on, and then walking to the chow line and telling a kid that yes, the helicopter might fly today if the wind holds and the numbers make sense. I do not ask for anything from the people here besides that. Numbers and sense. When both line up, gates open and kids run. When they do not, we tighten lines and survive the night. The carrier out there holds station. The base in here holds ground. Between the two, a thin wire of work connects every person who still believes we can live like humans and not like prey. Sunrise hits the pier in hard white bands. I check the fuel sheets first because those numbers will decide everything else. Diesel is steady but trending down. We lost 2 drums to a slow leak in a seam we thought was sound, which means we inspect every weld in that row. I circle the line in red and jot a note for the welding crew. The carrier's liaison calls in with the overnight log. Radar clean, deck drills complete. One arresting cable in the green, the other needs a tension check. I thank him and ask for a night run of ship power to top our battery farm after 2000. He agrees and reads back the time. No drama on the wire is the best sound I hear all week. Comms Petty Officer First Class. Malik brings in a plastic bin with drone parts we stripped from a wrecked quadrator. We lost that bird 2 days ago over an inlet where the harbor command voice runs a longer script. We never wasted that detail earlier, and it belongs here. The script is careful. It says medical care, food, and air transport to interior safe zones. It pushes every button that made us military people in the first place. We rebuilt a spare drone overnight with the salvaged camera, a lighter frame, and a better antenna. Malik asks permission to test it over the far sandbar where nobody lives. I approve with a limit on altitude and time. He grins quick and tired and vanishes into the comms shack to finish soldering. Sergeant Major Park catches me at the chow line. She holds her tray like it might bite. I know that look. It means a list is coming. She lays it out while we stand. The east fence post footings we flagged last week have begun to shift again after the rain. The patrol truck's right rear leaf spring cracked halfway. A civilian volunteer guard missed 2 shifts and claimed she swapped with a friend who does not exist. Park already reassigned the line and scheduled a short board for the guard. Nothing wild there. Then she lowers her voice and says the isolation trailer has gone quiet. The exposed auxiliary never improved. Lieutenant Valdez will call it and do what comes next. I stare past her at the wash line, count to 5 so I do not speak like a hammer, and tell her I will sit with the team afterward. We did not forget that from the earlier parts. It is still a thread that matters now. Mid-morning, the council meets to finalize the buoy line policy we rushed through during the flotilla mess. That live firefight came and went fast in the earlier telling, but the paperwork after it is the part that stops the next mess. We confirm standard ranges for loud hailers, warning shots, and engine disable rounds. We lock in a rule that every engagement gets a full review within 48 hours by at least 3 people who were not on the guns. We add a clause that says any captured crew who does voluntary work will be reviewed for parole at day 30. The vote is 6-1. The one is me. I ask for a longer review window. The council overrules me and I accept it. This is how we keep order from turning into habits that feel like comfort, but act like rot. We finally move a point I left out when the days were crowded. The schoolhouse asked for a second room and a covered recess space. We have the lumber now from a stack we ripped out of 3 ruined houses inland. I sign off on the build with a limit on nails because nails count as currency. Kids line up to watch the first holes go in for posts. A small boy asks if the covered space will keep the wind off when he eats. I say yes, and make sure that ends up true. A storm front slides in from the west faster than we expected. You could call that poor planning. It is more honest to admit the forecast is a rough guess with 2 pairs of eyes and an old barometer. The sky turns a dull plate color, and the first pushes of wind flap the tarps on the tool racks. We adjust shift times, secure loose material, and get the blowout kits on the truck roofs. Fence teams grab anchors and drive steel into mud at the sag points. I am on the line with a post hole digger because command does not float above mud. It stands in it until the job fits the word done. The gusts start pushing dust through the air, and the floodlights swing until the mounts bite. Kids are walked inside. The school keeps teaching with voices raised to cut across the wind. The carrier radios that she is shifting a few hundred yards to give us a better lee. That small move takes pressure off the pier. Whoever made that call on the bridge knows our base grid like a map in his own head. Rain arrives hard and short. The yard turns into a mess of puddles and streaming rivulets that find the low spots we never filled. We let it run. The lightning misses us and climbs over the hills instead. 2 infected stumble out of a drainage cut during the squall and slide into the ditch we dug for that exact reason. Quick reaction force stands at the lip and puts careful shots down. No target practice talk. Just work. The storm clears half an hour later and leaves the world washing clean with runoff. We walk the fence again, log every new sag, and set the team for a second round after lunch. The isolation trailer alarm sounds at 1300, the kind with no drama, a short tone and a steady light. Lieutenant Valdez radios the words we all know. I will not repeat them for spectacle. She does her job with calm hands. The chaplain stands at the door with her book closed. We keep it simple. A Marine stands watch during the removal because a turned body can surprise even seasoned hands. Not today. The gurney rolls. The door seals. The trailer vents. The cremation pit takes the bag. 1 minute of recorded names plays softly on the pier speaker. I stand with my notebook open and write the man's name in the ledger. I draw a box and a small cross that looks like a plus sign because even symbols bend into numbers here. Then, I go to the clinic to thank the team for getting every step right. You have to say that out loud after these events. It keeps people from folding inward. We head back to the buoy line for the parole review on the flotilla crew. This was a loose end I skipped earlier and it matters to the plot now. 3 of the captured deckhands worked without incident and helped shore up the breakwater after the storm. 2 griped and stalled. The captain kept his mouth shut since the tribunal and watched everything with that greasy calculation in his eyes. We sit him on a crate under the boat shed and ask him straight, can he work inside rules or does he need to be set off with a day of rations and a rowboat? He says he will work. I do not believe him, but the council votes to try parole for the 3 good hands and keeps him on the line longer. I sign off with conditions that are clear and loud. Any violation and the parole ends. Ski designs a simple armband system with colored cloth so our guards can tell at a glance who is where in their parole day. No confusion, which means fewer excuses. Malik's rebuilt drone is ready by late afternoon. We push to the sandbar, send it up, and let it run a square pattern to validate the video. The feed is crisp enough to count gulls. Good. We turn the nose toward the inlet with the fake voice and fly low. This is where the unused detail from earlier finally slots in. The drone finds a new barricade layout with more scrap cars and 2 vans positioned nose to nose as a funnel. We watch 5 men rehearse a wave-in, while 2 more crouch with rifles behind a rooftop vent. Infrared shows hotspots through the vans. People in the engine bays. Clever. That would have killed a truck team. We cut the feed to save the bird. I tell Malik to log the layout and mark the inlet as red for 60 days. We will not waste another flight there unless something large shifts. Dinner comes and goes in the smell of rice and smoked fish. The school's covered recess frame stands, a small gift after a hard day. Kids spin around the post like a celebration you would see in any town that still had a map on a phone. A boy points at the carrier and tells his friend he wants to fly one day. His friend says he wants to fish. Good. 2 jobs that demand patience and deliver food in different ways. I watch the last light fade off the island's superstructure and feel that old need to push for one more task. I leave it. We did enough today. Numbers and sense line up. The gate stays open for 20 more minutes for the joggers. Then we lock the base down and shift to night rhythm. Night Watch hands me a list at 0500. The pen traces slip a little from the cold. Nothing major. One outer camera froze in the storm and needs a manual twist to reset. The generator number 3 used more fuel than expected during peak load. And the Eastgate chicane collected a small pile of drift that will trap a tire if we do not clear it by noon. I sign off on the work orders and head to the pier rail with coffee that tastes like ash and sugar. The carrier blinks a single pattern to confirm the scheduled power share at 2000. I could live on that simple language forever. Blink, copy, work. Dana meets me at the chalkboard with today's agenda. She added something I asked for months ago and always ran out of time to pursue. Mapping and clearing a second safe route into the commercial strip inland. That street grid has shops we never touched because the warehouse plan held. Now that we need spare wire, hinges and fuel additives, those shops matter. We will not blow all that at once, but we will run small grabs that teach us what shop layout works and where infected tend to stack. My rule is simple. Never force a door you cannot recover behind. The plan assigns 2 teams and a sync point under a parking garage that has a good lane of sight in 3 directions. I approve with the condition that the helicopter stays 10 minutes out and the teams do not key it unless blood is spilled. The birds fly when they should, not because it feels good to hear rotors. We fold in another item I never slotted cleanly in, parts 1 and 2, aviation tires, and a resting gear spare strategy. The carrier's deck chief briefs me on the pier with a clipboard like mine. He wants 2 things from the base. A tighter rope ferry for small crates to speed up transfers during high wind, and a once-a-week deck walk from my people so they know how fragile those cables are. We lost one during the first weeks ashore because someone set a crate too close to the wire and a gust slid it 3 inches at the wrong time. Everybody lived. The crew still wakes up some nights thinking about that sound. I greenlight both ideas. We rig the rope ferry with pulleys and hang it high so food and small parts do not ride the main lane. And I put the deck walk on the school schedule for older kids. Understanding the ship keeps fear from turning into fairy tales. At 8, the 2 shop teams roll in light trucks with cages welded over the windshields and a plow blade on one bumper. Sergeant Major Park rides with Team 2 to evaluate a new volunteer who claims he can pick locks without wrecking the frame. Malik monitors feeds from 2 helmet cams and 1 small drone that shadows the route from above at rooftop height. The teams reach the strip and park nose out with lines of retreat clear. They work fast. A hardware store yields wire spools, hinge sets, and a crate of screws that is like music in a box. A hobby store gives up hand-crank gadgets, fishing lures, and a set of solar garden lights that our electrician thinks she can repurpose as night markers. The volunteer earns his place. He opens 2 rear service doors with a strip of metal and a field that looks like experience and not luck. Park writes his name in her notebook and I know what that means. He is on her radar now. Good. The trip back runs into a snag that tells me our changes after the last parts are paying off. A small pack of fast infected sprints down a cross street at the sound of a dropped shelf. The teams pull back into the garage, kill engines, and wait without firing. The infected thrash into the street, slide on a patch of oil, and pile into a mess of limbs. The volunteer starts to raise his rifle. Park puts a hand on the barrel and shakes her head. We do not waste rounds on a mess that is rolling away from us. A minute later, the street is empty again. The teams drive out and follow the longer route that adds 10 minutes and saves 4 magazines. That is how survival looks in year 2. Not glorious. Efficient. Back at base, the parole crew from the flotilla shows up for duty on time. 2 of the 3 look worn down and focused. The third watches the gate like a raccoon checks a coop. Ski notes it and pairs him with a marine who does not blink. The captain sits in his holding pen and glares at the water like he can heat it with eyes. He will test us again. You can feel it. I am fine with that. He will meet the same process and the same wall of numbers. Midday brings the council session that almost split us months ago and still shadows our days. We avoided it in the earlier past because the hour-to-hour was heavy, but the settlement deserves to hear it once, clean and full. The question was simple and explosive. Do we open the inner fence to more families faster, or do we maintain the slow intake with a hard cap until winter stocks grow? The plague month sat raw in everyone's minds. Families stood outside the inner gate and watched kids inside jump rope while their kids slept in tents. Dana argued for a faster intake with staggered quarantine cycles and extra tents inside the inner ring. Valdez pushed the other way. She laid out bed counts, oxygen counts, mask counts, and the space rules we set after the last burn. She said more bodies in tight air would set us up for a repeat. I sided with Valdez. The vote deadlocked 3-3, with 1 abstain. The abstain was me holding the gavel because I wanted the room to breathe. We took a walk. We came back. We moved to open 5 family slots every week, tied to specific skill needs, and to build a second quarantine yard with the lumber we had earmarked for a barracks we did not need yet. That solution cost us weeks of easy sleep and gave us a winter without new fires in the ward. People hated it at first. 6 months later, no one asked me to roll it back. I keep the minutes of that meeting in my jacket pocket. It is a reminder that votes matter more than growls. We push a perimeter expansion in the late afternoon to fold a cluster of service sheds into the fence. I walk point with the survey tape and Park marks anchor spots with spray paint. Civilians haul chain link and the Marines hold the perimeter with rifles low. We run into a nest in a tool shed. The smell hits before the eyes adjust. 3 walking dead, slow, tangled in hose and wire. We back out, torch the doorway, and let it burn down without a dramatic push. The fire climbs into the roof and collapses inward. When it cools, we rake the ash for metal we can use and mark the spot for a gravel dump. That corner will be a flat staging area by next week. The carrier radios an equipment request that looks small on paper and big in life. A set of heavy-duty scissors for hull-on bottle seals and a pressure tester for a pump line. We have both from the old fire shop. I send a deck crew kid with the bag up the gangway on the tug. He walks like he is stepping into a stadium. The carrier's deck chief meets him at the top with a nod, no over-the-top ceremony, and hands him a bag of coffee. The kid comes back smiling like he grew 2 inches. These trades build a bridge as real as any gangway. It is not just parts, it is respect passed hand to hand. Evening is for drills. We run a silent breach response in the north quadrant. No sirens, only radio clicks and hand signals. Civilians watch from a safe line as Marines and auxiliaries practice moving through a mock row of shacks to tag and bag a reanimating body before it spreads. We do not put a real person in the role. We use a weighted dummy and a buzzer. People need muscle memory more than they need anxiety theater. The drill runs clean on the second pass. We end with a quick hot wash and a list of small adjustments. 1 taller person moved to point so he does not get hung in a low door. 1 light shifted 6 feet to kill a shadow that looked like a threat from a bad angle. We log it and tape the changes to the duty board. I stop by the school on my way to the pier. The covered recess space has a roof now. Kids drew numbers across the floor in chalk. The teacher wrote a new rule in block letters. No running with hot cups. An older girl reads to 3 smaller kids about a city with buses and ice cream. She avoids the pages with pictures of crowds because those twist faces into something we do not need at bedtime. I stand in the doorway with my cap in my hands for a minute. and then leave before anyone claps me on the back or tries to pull a thank you speech out of me. This is theirs. I just signed the lumber list. Night comes on clean. The carrier's lights blink twice and then the power share kicks in. Our meters swing up. The battery farm drinks. I stand at the transformer yard and listen to the hum step down into a steady stream that the base understands. Malik walks up and hands me a slip. He wrote down 3 brief intercepts from inland during the storm. 2 were junk. 1 was a string that matched old parity checks again. We tried to answer. Nothing came back. I put the slip in my pocket under the council minutes and leave it there. If a real signal ever wants to live in our world, it will answer inside a window we can work. Until then, it is an itch we cannot scratch. I end the day at the ledger with the chaplain. We add 1 name from the isolation trailer. We add 1 rule to the board by hand. Double glove for any interior work near pooled water, even if the room looks clean. We pin the kids' safe streets map next to the shop team routes and run a piece of string from the chalk lines to the real grid. The lines line up more than I expected. The world the kids drew is the world we made without trying to be poetic about it. Paths that avoid noise, corners that feel safe. Places where people meet under a roof and talk about nothing important because the important things will be there in the morning no matter what. I walk the pier one more time. The parole crew sleeps behind a wire line without grumbling. The captain stares at the ceiling of his cell like he is counting the bolts. The wind is out of the west again, but lighter. The floodlights throw steady cones across the fence, and the gravel throws back that dull shine that means it is level. The carrier out there turns her island lights to red, and the deck crews coil a line with the exact kind of neat that tells me people still care about standards. I write 1 last line in my notebook. Numbers and cents today. I close it and go to bed with my boots next to the rack and the radio on the crate. Morning will come and it will bring a list. We will meet it with work. I wake before the alarm and lie still long enough to hear the base breathing. The generator hum is steady, the wind is light, and somewhere a guard clears a throat near the east tower. I sit up, pull on boots, and scan the clipboard on the crate. Overnight entries are short. 1 coyote inside the outer fence near the smokehouse, shooed back out without shots. A camera blink on the north road, reset by hand. The parole crew slept through. The captain asked for extra blankets and was denied. I pour coffee that tastes like a nail and head to the pier. The carrier's island shows dim work lights. A deck crew hoses down a corner and pushes water to scuppers. Work that looks boring, but keeps planes from sliding later. Malik intercepts me halfway to the chow line. He has that look he gets when the radio behaved like a decent tool. The market net is open early, and the bus lot traders have posted new rules. No antibiotics in open trade, only through the med board, and only for items on a short list. That list includes fuel line cleaner, spark plugs, and raw salt. This is the fallout from our last hospital run. Word got around that we brought back a small cache. Now everyone wants to police everyone else. I do not hate that instinct. I hate the chaos it creates at the tables if we do not meet it with our own rules. We convene a quick council huddle on the pallets outside the command shack. Dana reads the proposed market swap sheets. Lieutenant Valdez wants a medical sidebar at the lot with a posted triage priority, handled by 3 medics and 2 guards. She will trade small antibiotic courses for real symptoms only, wound infections, sepsis signs, and pneumonia flags. No bartering for stashes. I support her and set 2 conditions. Any exchange is logged with names and doses, and we do not trade anything that leaves our own stock under the line for 2 weeks of surge. Council nods. We draft the sign for the lot and write the line in thick black. No private antibiotic sale. Anyone breaking it loses trade privileges for a month and receives a public warning. Ugly, but fair. We send 2 trucks to the lot with a small escort and strict orders to avoid arguments. The morning goes stiff but workable. The med board sees 7 cases. A deep cut turned hot on a fisherman's calf. A child with a rattling cough who needs oxygen and time more than pills. A woman with a tooth abscess that our medic lances behind a tarp and dresses with proper kit. We trade 2 small courses of antibiotics and a bag of saline for hand tools, raw salt, and spark plugs. The child leaves with a blanket and instructions to sleep on his side and return if his lips go pale. The mother cries quietly into her sleeve when the medic gives her a cheap pulse oximeter from our box and a clear number to watch for. That little screen might save him. It might not. We did what numbers allowed. Trouble bumps the edge at noon. 2 men in mismatched fatigues try to move antibiotics under the table from a cooler, claiming they got them from us. Our guard spots our fake seal on the bottle. Wrong color ring. She flags it, calls me on the radio, and the market marshal takes the men aside. We do not start a fight. We present the seal sample and the log. The men trip over their lies and leave in a hurry. 10 minutes later, a whisper runs around the lot that the Navy base is hoarding meds. That whisper would grow teeth if left alone, so I do the thing I dislike most and step up on a pallet. I say 3 sentences. We trade with rules. We treat with rules. And we will not tolerate fraud. I point to our board and offer a simple check. Anyone who wants proof can inspect the med logs under guard at the lot. Names redacted. Quantities clear. Eyes drop. That ends it for the day. Not forever. Enough. Back at base, the temperature drops fast. Wind turns sharp and carries grit under the fence lips. Cold snaps make infected move in weird patterns, like the chill stiffens them, and then noise lights them up. We call for a silent posture. No unnecessary engines. No hammering. Floodlights to half. The quick reaction force pulls on heavier jackets and rotates hand warmers so trigger fingers do not lock. We run the fence walk in pairs with radios clipped high and weapons on safe. The air stings lungs and tastes like dust. We hit the north fence in time to see the first cluster appear out of the scrub. 15 walking dead, slow, shoulders hunched, moving toward the line of trailers where the wind breaks. They are not hunting. They are trying to get out of the wind like any animal would. They brush the wire and set the motion alarms off anyway. We adjust the lights to push them along the ditch. 3 stumble in and cannot climb. We finish those with careful shots and leave the others to drift out of range. Ammo matters more than comfort. An hour later, the cold snap turns the test into a wave. Noise from the market convoy returning. Engines in the quiet. Draws another group from the rail cut. We hold the inner gate and leave the convoy outside until the clusters pass. The drivers sit still with engines off. One auxiliary starts to twitch his boots. Park taps the window with a knuckle and holds up a flat palm. He stills. On the fence, the infected bunch tighten press. The wire sings. The first section leans. We brace with poles and sandbags and call in 2 more guards. No panic. The ditch catches a handful and the rest turn into the lane where we left scrap cars as blocks. They bump and stall there, and the line dissolves as the quiet settles. We count heads, check the wire, and wave the trucks through. The drivers roll at a crawl and stare straight ahead. Good discipline. In the middle of this, Ski finds a note slid under the parole pen door. He brings it to me without comment. The paper is greasy, the letters pressed hard. It is from the flotilla captain. He wants a talk at the fence with me, alone, after dark. He writes that he can deliver fuel and information about a real command inland. He also writes a line that rings false in my bones. He says he knows the codes. People who know codes do not write it like that. They say which ones and when. We set a trap of our own. We tell him yes, and set the meeting at a spot under full camera, floodlights ready, and a marine pair out of sight in the shadows. The captain arrives at dusk with his hands raised and his chin up like he thinks he is charming. He talks fast. He offers a trade. He says he can deliver 2,000 liters of diesel if we let him borrow a small boat and 1 radio. He says he will bring back proof of command inland in a week. Every sentence smells like a line. I let him finish and ask him for a call sign and a code window. He gives me a random string and a time that fell on a Sunday 3 months ago. I hold his eyes and say nothing for a long time. He laughs and shrugs like he is in on a joke. I nod to Ski. The Marines step forward and the captain goes back into his pen. He spits on the ground and calls us cowards. I do not rise to it. A coward wastes men on vanity. We did not do that today. That night, we put his pen on extra watch and double the locks. We also shift his 3 parolees to a different crew with different routes and a new supervisor so he cannot pass messages by habit. Dana writes the tribunal notice for the morning. Attempted subversion of security. Attempted theft by deception. and breach of parole agreement by incitement. It is not a capital case. It is a long work detail case. He will hate it more. His crew will see the cost. That is the point. I walk the cold fence in the last hour before midnight. Frost threads along the lower wire and glints in the floodlights. The gravel is hard under boots, and the air smells like metal and smoke. A guard coughs and covers her mouth with the crook of her elbow like we taught. I ask if her mask fits. She nods and adjusts the nose wire. A slow infected presses a palm against the fence and smears frost. It leaves a greasy mark and moves on. We hold this place by inches and by minutes. It is not hero work. It is work. I sign the last patrol sheet and head in. The base sleeps in blocks and shifts. The carrier hums out on the dark water like a calm engine in a neighbor's garage. The carrier sends a message at dawn. Quarterly sea trial tonight. 4 hours at distance. Minimal power share. Radar on limited sweep. We planned for this in the earlier drafts and kept it in our pocket. The deck chief reads the schedule and the expected windows for cat cycles to warm actuators. I read back our base prep plan. We will downshift to low draw, kill the big floods, and run only essential circuits. The kids know the drill as lights out game night. The grown-ups know it as the hour you notice what you waste. Before we get to that, the tribunal for the flotilla captain runs in the boat shed with the charter posted and the camera recording. He stands with his hands behind his back like he thinks that makes him look official. Dana reads the charges. We play the audio of his meeting with me. He flinches when he hears his own voice stumble over the fake code line. A few civilians mutter. I raise a hand, and the sound dies. We are not a mob. We are a place that runs on rules. The council votes for a 60-day work sentence at the breakwater with a guard. No parole review during that period, and a move to isolation at night to prevent further incitement. He opens his mouth to argue and then closes it. He is not stupid. He knows we could have made it worse. He also knows we will not. That balance keeps the fence from becoming a wall that turns us into something else. The guard rotation at the isolation trailers changes at 10, and Lieutenant Valdez stops me with a quick report. 2 cases in the outer camp clinic show fever and shortness of breath without obvious exposure pathways. She is cautious without panic. She requests a temporary mask mandate in the tents and a halt on new intakes for 72 hours. I agree and ask her to post the why in the simplest language. People accept rules when the reason is clear and the clock is visible. She writes it on a board. Slow fever cluster, watch for cough and fatigue, clean hands, masks inside tents, review in 3 days. No big stamp, no sirens. Just the facts. We use the day to clear every task that would be ugly and low power. The welders finish the east fence footings. The rope ferry to the carrier gets a last check, pulleys greased and lines waxed. The smokehouse crew salts a batch early so the burn can cool before the sea trial. The school loads a crate of books into the covered recess space and runs a story hour, then a math hour, then a quiet hour. I sit in the back and watch a kid trace numbers with a chewed pencil, and then turn to check the window. When a helicopter passes at altitude, the motor noise draws heads, and then the room goes back to work. That rhythm is the skeleton under everything. At 1800, the carrier signals departure. Her shape shifts against the horizon, and then melts into the dark. We shut down the non-essentials. Floods off. Yard lights to 1 in 4. Power to the med ward holds steady and glows soft. The bass changes tone. Voices drop a notch. You can hear small sounds that daytime hides. Wind under aluminum sheets. A door hinge we missed. The soft step of a guard changing stance. We run a small patrol in pairs along the outer fence, with one thermal scope passed between them at checkpoints. The scope shows the world as warm smudges and cool voids. It is useful and disorienting. I tell them to split the look with naked eye every other minute to keep brain and tool honest. On the pier, the parole crew beds down early with blankets under the tarp. The captain sits in his pen and hums a tune without words. He stops when the watch walks by and starts again when it passes. The sound irritates guards by design. Ski hears it on the rotation and smiles without humor. He posts a portable white noise box near the pen and dials it up just enough to drown the tune. He tells the guard to log it as noise mitigation and moves on. Smart. No confrontations, no escalations. Problem turned into a line on a page. Halfway through the sea trial, the wind shifts and brings a smell from the old town. Not smoke, not rot, cooking. Someone inland is burning something edible. Smell carries farther when the base is dark. The outer camp shifts in its sleep. A dog whines once and goes quiet. I put a note to set a patrol out that way at dawn, to see if anyone is trying to light a new settlement too close to our fence. We do not own the land. We do own our perimeter plan, and a fire within 2,000 yards is a hazard. If it is a family cooking, we will offer rules and space. If it is a raider nest, the quick reaction force will make it a cold spot by noon. An hour later, the cold tests the fence again. The infected show up in a loose line along the railroad bed and drift toward the warm patch that is the med ward. The new layered skirt on the fence works. They slide down and back like rain on a slicker. One finds a gap we had not seen and gets a forearm through the wire. The guard hits the arm with a baton and the body falls back. No firing. The baton lives in a disinfectant bucket after, and the guard changes gloves twice. He logs the gap and sets a cone. The maintenance crew will hit it at first light with more skirt and a bolt plate. This is how we stop an event from becoming a story. We fix the gap and move on. With power low and the bass quiet, the radio sounds louder. Malik calls from the shack with a thin burst. It is that parity match again, a string that lines up with old code structure. He is careful this time. He does not use the old key. He sends a plain language query. Identify and authenticate. The response is one word, repeated twice, and then silence. The word is a place name from the interior, one that used to host a secure facility. My mouth goes dry and I write the word on a slip. I do not move it to the board. I put it in my pocket with the council minutes. We do nothing tonight. The carrier is out. The base is on low power. This can wait until daylight when numbers and sense are stronger than late-night adrenaline. The carrier returns near midnight as a dark block against darker water. Her blink pattern announces approach. Then the short eye clicks and power eases back up. The base exhales, not with relief but with readiness. The kids' night game fizzles, and parents lift blankets back over small shoulders. The med ward's soft glow turns a shade brighter. I head to the transformer yard with the deck chief and sign the handoff sheet. He scribbles a note about cable tension and a salt crust on one insulator. We schedule a clean in the morning. I pass him a canvas bag with those halon scissors and the pressure tester we promised. He passes me a jar of beans and smiles, hand to hand again. We run a dawn patrol to the source of last night's cooking smell. The team finds a small camp under the overpass, where 3 adults and 2 kids are making soup in a pot that once held paint. They see us and freeze. Park holds up a palm and lowers her rifle. She speaks first and uses the words that make this work. Quarantine, rules, water, food, masks. They nod fast and keep nodding. We bring them to the outer camp, run the screening, and get them a tent in the second quarantine yard we built after that deadlocked council. One of the kids holds a toy car made from a sardine can with wooden wheels. He rolls it back and forth on a crate. He looks at the fence and then at the car. He is not afraid. He is watchful. Good. We brief the council on the inland code word with the carrier liaison at the table. We all feel the pull to move on it. I push back hard. We need authentication, a corridor, and a reason to risk a helicopter that might never fly again if it takes one bad hit. We set a staged plan. 3 days of passive listening only, 2 days of drone overflight to look for spoof rigs, and an inland patrol from the farms who know the trails, unarmed and fast, to watch for signs that match the old facility layout, grates, vents, cable runs. If those do not line up, we shelve it for a month. No hero runs. No late-night dashes for a rumor wrapped in numbers. The vote passes. The carrier liaison writes a note for his captain. We agree to hold the jet for recon, only if the first 3 checks pass and the weather allows. By afternoon, the parole crew is back at the breakwater. The captain's pen has a second tarp against wind and a third lock. He sits and stares at nothing, which is fine. The crews on the wall drive rebar and pour concrete in narrow forms that look like discipline. The kids at the school take turns at the hand-crank washing drum and laugh when the suds climb a little too high. The med ward posts the 72-hour review note on the fever cluster. 1 improved, 1 stable, 1 moved to observation. The base moves like a machine that understands itself. We start the passive listening window on the inland code source at dawn. Malik sets 2 receivers on separate antennas, logs signal strength, and runs a time check against the carrier's clock. The burst comes twice in the first hour. Same parity behavior, same clipped cadence. We do not answer. We mark it and shift to drone prep. 1 small quadrator will fly a ladder pattern over the valley approach. 1 fixed-wing scout with a prop will loiter high to watch for vehicle movement. Nothing else leaves the ground. No jet, no helicopter, not yet. The farms send 2 trail watchers who know every drainage and side cut between us and the coordinates. They carry field glasses, chalk, and a coil of string. No rifles. Orders are clear. No contact, no entry, no hero moves. They will mark unusual vents, new cut paths, or antenna arrays with chalk spots that our drone can see later. They jog out through the east gate with a quiet wave and vanish into scrub. I hate sending anyone without a weapon. The numbers demand it. 2 unarmed people can walk past a dozen eyes if they move like civilians who belong. 2 armed people look like a patrol and start a fight. At the market lot, our medboard opens on time under a tarp. We keep everything visible. Lieutenant Valdez sits on a crate with a stethoscope and a clipboard. 2 guards stand with rifles down. A painted sign says, "What we will trade and what we will not." The old rumor about us hoarding pills flickers at the edges but never lights. People come for stitches, advice, and saline more than antibiotics. We bring a small oxygen concentrator and run it from a pedal rig, so a child with shallow breaths can sit for 20 minutes and leave with pink lips. That earns more goodwill than any speech. Mid-morning, the first drone flies the ladder. The footage looks plain until you start counting. 1 fence line cut and rewired. 1 gate padlocked from the outside but scuffed on the inside. A pair of vent stacks half hidden in brush. New tire marks that stop at a drainage grate. That grate is wrong. The fixed wing confirms a small plume of heat nearby. Not a campfire. Something steady. The old facility charts say a service access should sit 200 yards west. Our image shows nothing there. Either the place was stripped or someone camouflaged it. We bring the drone home and file every frame. The farm's trail watchers radio in on a pre-arranged phrase. They left a chalk spiral on a culvert near the coordinates, and a second mark on a rock face that lines up with a cable run. It is the kind of detail no scavenger would plant. This place is probably real. Now the question becomes what it is, who runs it, and what it wants. The word we heard could be bait, could be ghosts, or could be a bunker with a working lab and a plan that needs hands. If it is a lab, we will face the decision we have been putting off since the base started breathing steady. Risk a bird to pull something out or keep our last air to protect the fence. I feel the drag of both options before we even meet for the vote. On the pier, the parole crew lays forms in a rhythm that matches the sound of the small surf. One of them, Marta, late 20s, eyes like a welder, works with her head down and never looks at the captain in the pen. She is the one who asked for parole first, and she has hit every line since. The second, Jensen, a former deckhand, follows her lead. The third, the raccoon-eyed watcher from day one, drifts. He looks for angles. He stares at locks. He slows when no one watches. Ski says to keep him glued to a pair of Marines until the days burn that look out of him, or he drifts back to the pen by choice. Afternoon council opens with the inland signal on the board. We walk through the 3 gates we set. Passive listen met, drone pass met, ground eyes met. We reach the 4th, a low-risk contact test. I propose a simple call and response from the edge of the grid with a handheld and a throwaway challenge. No identifying data, no call sign, just a time and a general phrase. If the reply carries a correct counterphrase from the old structure, we move to step 5, a beachhead with bodies. If it does not, we shelve this for 30 days. The carrier liaison agrees. Dana wants a time box. She does not want the base to twist around a rumor for a month. We set a 5-day window. That keeps us from bleeding patience into hope. The test call goes out at dusk from a ridgeline 2 miles east of the grid. Sergeant Major Park handles it with a calm voice. Local unit seeking verification. The reply comes in 7 seconds. Verification follows. It is the right counterphrase. Correct length. Correct checksum. Then, a pause. Then, one more string that matches a facility subcode for a place that handled disease control studies. I write the full line down and slide the paper to Malik. He taps it twice and nods once. Real. Not 100% yet, but close enough that the hair on the back of my neck feels like a wire. We do not move anything tonight. We wait for morning and lay out an approach that minimizes the chance that we feed our last helicopter to a lie. Night brings a different problem. Market day means more motion. More motion means raiders watch for weak seams. A group tries to test the west fence at 2000, right where the new skirt meets an older run. They flash lights and bang a piece of rebar to draw guards. At the same time, 2 cars roll from the south road with their lights off, aiming for the chicane. It is a soft, coordinated prod, not a full attack. We answer with numbers and patience. Floods step up in stages, not all at once. Quick reaction rolls quiet and cuts 1 car off before the chicane. The other car hits a spike strip and stops dead. No shots. We haul the drivers out and put them on their faces. One tries to swing, and Park drops him with a straight elbow. In the floodlight, the faces are too young. That is common now. We do not turn this into a warning by gunshot. We confiscate the cars, search them, and find nothing but a bad idea and 2 empty rifles. They get a ban from the market and a week of hauling gravel for the wall. The fence holds. Panic never crosses the wire. That is the win. I sleep 4 hours and wake up with a list already in my head. For the inland contact, we need a small team that can run a foot approach and handle a medical handoff if that is what we find. We pick Lieutenant Valdez, 1 Marine pair, 1 engineer with lock and measure skills, and 1 comms tech with a short-range set. No helmets, no unit patches, clean faces, civilian jackets over plate carriers. The helicopter sits on a 5-minute strip alert, pilot in the seat, bird-powered but cold on the deck. The carrier holds a drone in the air at 10,000 feet to watch the roads near the grid. We transmit the rendezvous point 1 hour before step-off and set a fail-safe code. If we say the word moisture, the bird does not land. The team walks out just after sunrise, with masks around their necks and eyes forward. They reach the ridgeline and wait until the top of the hour. Park calls the phrase again. The reply is shorter this time, and it adds a note that makes my teeth grind. It asks for an air pickup from the east clearing because ground access is compromised. I taste that word like a stain. We will not land blind. Park replies with our condition. Produce visual proof on a panel in the open, then we talk. The panel appears 10 minutes later where the drone can see. It is a sheet with a large alphanumeric grid that matches a code string used by disease control for supply runs. The number in the corner matches the last 2 digits of the parity check we logged last night. That is too tight for a random fake. I give the bird a go code for a high pass only. No skids on dirt. The pilot skims and sends down a speaker message. Wait 1 hour. Be ready for a low hover drop of a rope. No one crowd the line. We will abort if any shape approaches within 20 feet uninvited. The voice on the radio replies with the correct acknowledgement. Back at base, I pull Dana and the carrier liaison into a short private huddle. If this is a trap, we lose a helicopter at best and people at worst. If it is real, we could bring back a kit that helps our med ward or teaches us something about the infection that can shave death off the edge. We lay out odds like a simple math problem in pencil. It does not make the choice easier, it makes it honest. I authorize 1 attempt with a hard abort line if any sign looks wrong. Pilots know the line by heart. Nora nods tight and checks her bag again. She leaves anything that is not critical. Mass matters. The hour passes like a crank turning. The helicopter goes in low with doors off and a rope ready. The team on the ground crouches behind a berm. Our drone watches the rooftops and tree lines for any last-second movement. The field looks clean. Then, a figure in a white hood steps into the open, raises hands, and holds up a flat case with a black stripe. The helo drops the rope. The figure clips the case to the line, steps back, and kneels. No one else moves. The pilot lifts the case to the door, and the crew chief drags it in. Nora shouts a go to leave. The pilot lifts, banks, and clears the field before anyone can blink. A second figure runs into the open waving arms. We do not go back. We are not rescuing bodies. We are lifting a box that may save more lives than we can count. The second figure falls to his knees and stays there. I write one line on a page and draw a hard black border around it. We do not risk the helicopter twice. On the way home, the bird takes one shot from a ridge. The round hits the tail boom fairing and leaves a white scratch. The pilot does not flinch. He climbs, shoves forward, and returns to the base with the case in the crew chief's lap, and a silence so loud I can hear it through the radio at the pier. The bird flares and lands. We seal the case in a clean bag and take it to the med ward isolation bench. Nora scrubs in and opens it with the kind of patience that makes you want to lean over her shoulder. She does not let anyone crowd her. Inside are vials, a printed protocol, a stack of test strips in foil, and a tablet with a battery that still holds. The paper says one word that touches something in every eye in the room. Candidate. Not promise, not cure. Candidate. I can live with that word. We do not celebrate. We move like a team that has done this before. Nora and 2 assistants read the protocol 3 times. The engineer measures the fridge temps with a backup sensor and logs it every 15 minutes. Malik pulls the tablet data onto an air-gapped laptop and prints everything. I sign a rule that says no one in the camp uses any part of this without medboard orders and council oversight. We will not test on kids. We will not test on pregnant women. We will start with volunteers from the guard who understand the risk and sign it with their own names. The chaplain stands by with a pen and a hard face. She will not pressure or bless. She will witness. Before we can even digest what sits on the table, the inland contact pings again with a new line. It is a simple received. No demand, no brag, no new instruction. That makes my shoulders drop an inch. If this were a raider play, we would hear gloating. If it were a bunker looking to own us, we would hear orders. We get acknowledgement, and then nothing. We log it and move on. The team showers. The pilot sits on a crate outside the hangar, with his hands still on his knees, like he is flying in his head. I hand him a mug and say very little. He nods once and stares at the horizon. We set up a small triage for volunteers that evening after the kids go to sleep. The first 3 are Marines. One has a scar along his scalp from the week we burned barracks. He says he will take the same risk for a chance to keep the next man off a list. Nora explains the protocol and the unknowns with no decoration. She explains what we will and will not do. The men sign. We begin at dawn, when the lab temp holds steady. This is not a miracle. It is a process that might shift a number. That is enough. While this moves, the world continues. The parole crew finishes the day at the breakwater and shuffles back to the pen. The captain tries to bait a guard with small insults and cheap flattery. The guard leans on the rail and watches the sky until the words run out. The kids at the school paint their Safe Streets map on the wall in the new room and draw the carrier on the horizon like a block with lights. The generator crew logs a tiny voltage sag on line 2, finds a cracked lug, fixes it with a new crimp, and marks the time. These tiny lines save us as much as any box of vials. At sunrise, Nora administers the first controlled dose to the volunteers under full observation. No one else in the ward talks. Every eye is on hands and numbers. We log time down to the minute. We keep the rest of the base out of the ward after morning rounds to reduce noise and risk. The chaplain sits in the doorway and writes without looking up. I stand in the hall and listen to the sound of the fridge compressor and the click of a pen. Outside, the fence crew shifts gravel on the east side and the smokehouse opens vents. Inside, 3 men breathe and wait and crack small jokes to keep muscles from locking up. By mid-morning, temperature charts look boring. That is good. One volunteer feels lightheaded and drinks water. Another says his joints ache and then says it passes. Nora checks pupils and lungs and writes down numbers without snapping the pen. Lieutenant Valdez is honest in the room and brutally honest outside of it. She tells the council that day one tells us very little, that we will not know anything worth knowing for days, and that we will not push dosage or skip steps to feed boredom or hope. The council agrees. Dana writes a note for the board. Trial underway, volunteers safe, no public access, updates nightly. It reads like the rules for a dock shift, and that is exactly right. The inland contact breaks silence near noon with a single string and a short voice message. The message is clinical. It thanks us for extraction of the package and asks us to broadcast nothing else for now. It says, "Do not send further air until we request." That line earns my respect. The voice sounds tired. It could be theater. It feels like truth. We comply and shut the channel. We owe them a clean radio picture if we expect more crates. The parole situation reaches a head in the afternoon. Marta asks for permanent placement. She wants to join the wall crew full-time and live inside the fence with her own work badge. Jensen asks to stay too, but he wants the docks. The third drifter, Rook, the watcher, tries to slip a bolt cutter under his coat during a break. The Marine on him calls it in. Ski and I walk over. We find the cutter in a trash barrel nearby, still warm from his hands. Rook says nothing. He looks at the ground and waits for a hole to open under him. It does not. The council convenes a fast board outside the shed. 2 votes for parole revocation. 2 for a final chance with a leash. I break the tie and pull parole. Rook goes back to the pen for the full remainder, plus 30 days after for incitement. Marta and Jensen get their badges, and a spot near the fence and the docks respectively. The captain watches all of it without blinking. He learned nothing. I can work with that. Predictable men fail in predictable ways. We planned for a market day breach attempt, and the next one comes on schedule. It is smarter and meaner than the last. A truck pulls into the lot with 2 barrels of fish and 3 kids in the bed to look harmless. The driver smiles too much. Our guard sees a rifle muzzle under a tarp at the tailgate and raises her hand. The market marshal freezes the lot. Our loudhailer says the words everyone knows now. Show hands, step back, drop the tarp. The driver laughs and rips the tarp instead. 3 men roll out and level weapons at the med tent. We answer with controlled fire from behind engine blocks and a stack of pallets. 1 raider drops. 1 panics and fires wild. 1 runs straight for the med tent. A civilian trader trips him with a length of hose and sits on his legs. Our guard disarms him. The kids climb out of the bed, scream, and run to the marshal. The whole thing ends in under 30 seconds. No civilians shot. 2 raiders wounded and bandaged for tribunal. The driver unhurt and already talking himself into a hole. We lock the truck, move the barrels of fish to a neutral corner, and shut the lot for the day. Every trader in the circle watches with a face like stone, but no one pushes back. They like rules more than they like drama. We prove again that we will not let medicine or kids become bargaining chips. That night I do the walk I always do before we make a hard pivot. The fence holds. The wind dies. The carrier sends a single blink on the island, then goes still. I check the med ward door and see Nora asleep in a chair with a blanket around her shoulders and a logbook open on her lap. A nurse sits with the volunteers and marks down anything that looks like change every 10 minutes. Small muscle twitches, a sigh, a cough. Most of it is nothing. All of it goes on paper. The chaplain watches the hallway and nods at me once, and that nod says more than any line I could write. Day 2 of the trial gives us small things. The light-headed volunteer says it feels like a long run in thin air. Nora notes mild fever and tells him to drink. The second says his joints ache again, and then laughs and says he misses the bad coffee from ship duty. The third sleeps more than the others and wakes with a dry mouth. None of that is dangerous yet. None of it is proof of anything good. We wait. The base hates waiting, but we do it well now. We fill the hours with useful work. The greenhouse gets a new drip line. The school paints a line on the ground for a hop game and invents rules no adult understands. The smokehouse crew pulls a rack and hands a strip to the quick reaction force as they pass. The market reopens with stricter checks and fewer smiles. Everyone adjusts in a day. The inland voice sends 1 more burst that afternoon. It asks for a ground drop of a small battery pack at the ridge in 2 nights. No air, no contact. The drop window is narrow. If we refuse, it might close the line forever. If we accept, we risk a foot team on a ridge that raiders watch. I call a huddle with Park, Nora, and Dana. It is not a request for opinion. It is a decision with checks. We weigh night movement, ridge visibility, and our ability to overwatch with a drone. We choose a 2-person team with no metal gear and soft boots. One will carry the pack in a bag wrapped to hide heat. The other will watch with glasses. We will track them with a weak beacon that only our receiver knows. If anything moves wrong, they drop the pack and leave. If raiders show, we will not respond with gunfire. We will not start a fight for a battery. Park nods. She picks the pair herself and sends them to sleep early. Day 3 of the trial holds steady and gives us one hard line that may matter later. The volunteers' oxygen levels drop by 2 points and then come back up by evening. It is probably nothing. It might be a thing. Nora circles it and writes watch in the margin. I look at her face and see that careful hope that comes from numbers and not from stories. We keep doses stable and pace the checks. The ward runs on low talk and steady hands. The chaplain reads names from the ledger in a low voice near the pier, and then joins the night watch with a thermos she did not drink from all day. The drop night arrives with no moon. The team moves slow and quiet to the ridge with the beacon strapped low on a belt. The drone watches the road with a cold eye. No headlights. No people. The pair places the pack under a rock shelf, chalks a mark on the north face that only a trained eye will notice, and leaves a second mark 50 yards away to see if anyone reads the wrong one. They walk back without speaking. 2 shapes move in the valley during the return. The team stops, sinks into brush, and waits. The shapes hunch and move like infected, not like men. They drift down the drainage and vanish. The team returns before dawn. We log the drop and the lack of contact. The voice on the radio sends a single received that afternoon. No thanks. No extra words. Good. Tribunal day for the market raiders is short. The driver tries to charm. It fails. We run the video. We log the barrel counts and deliver them back to a neutral trader under watch. The raiders get a sentence. 2 months of wall work with a guard and no market privileges. One civvy who tripped the attacker gets a public note of thanks, a box of nails, and a bag of rice. He blushes and says he just stuck a foot out. That is how this place works. Small honest acts matter. We do not make statues. We give nails. On day 4 of the trial, the volunteers' oxygen numbers hold steady again, and a small marker on the test strip shows a shift we can read. We triple-check the strip. We run a control. We run a second control. The line stays visible. It is not the answer. It is a nudge in the right direction. Nora says 3 words, "We may continue," and packs the strips away like they are gold coins. We do not cheer. We breathe and mark the chart. The chaplain permits herself one short smile in the hallway, where no one can make it into more than it is. Midweek, the farms bring in a hunter with a broken wrist. He slipped on wet rock and fell. The clinic sets the bones, wraps him, and sends him home with a sling and instructions. The old world would call this boring. Here, it is an example of what makes a settlement safe in any meaningful sense. He will heal and feed people again. He will teach a kid how to set a net. He will watch a fence at night and point his chin at a gap before it opens. Multiply that by 500. That is our strength. The inland voice goes quiet for 2 days. That fits the pattern. We do not chase it. We do not send more gifts. We listen and keep our grid tidy. The carrier conducts a short flight check to cycle hydraulic systems and then signals all good with a blink. The deck crews paint a fresh line along the catwalk that the kids will copy on the school floor tomorrow. Dana signs a trade with the bus lot for more raw salt in exchange for a crate of wire fuses and 2 hand-crank pumps. The pumps turn up in a video the next day at the market where a trader shows others how to use them. That is better than holding 2 pumps on a shelf. The parole story finds a finish the way these stories do, with small choices over many days. Marta never misses a shift. She helps a young guard breathe through a night where infected crowd the wire in freezing wind. She shows a trick with a tarp and a stake that lets one person cover a breach, while another sets a brace. She stops looking over her shoulder for her old crew. She belongs. Jensen hauls nets on the dock, learns to tie knots our sailors do in their sleep, and admits he lied about years at sea to look bigger when he first walked in. He shrugs and says he wants to stop lying. We shrug back and say that is fine. His hands learn the truth faster than his mouth. Rook sits in the pen and stares through the fence, lips moving. He is the man who will keep choosing badly. He is the warning on two legs. We feed him, we guard him, and we do not let his choices yank us off the path. On the 8th day, the inland voice asks for one last exchange. It wants a small crate of non-medical supplies, batteries, wire, duct tape, in return for documentation. No people moved, no air. We assembled the crate, mark it with a chalk code, and run the same ridge drop. The drone watches again. This time, we catch a shadow near the grate. We hold our breath and let the shadow pass. The drop completes. The reply comes at dusk. Malik prints 24 pages from the tablet we collected earlier, now that we have the right key. The pages outline a field kit protocol that matches what Nora already started, plus a longer plan for a community-level response that actually fits what we have. Masks, spacing, oxygen management, early warning on fever clusters, and the use of a specific cheap drug we can scavenge if we prioritize warehouses we used to ignore. It is not a cure. It is a plan that makes our way of living safer by inches. We can execute this. It is within our hands. We present it to the council and the civilian groups that night. I speak the short version. Nothing here promises salvation. Everything here adds up to fewer funerals. The room nods, and the nods feel like a tide. We assign tasks. We push masks back up in the tents during cold snaps. We rewrote scavenging to target 2 pharmacies and 1 supply depot that lists the drug on old manifests. We build a second oxygen concentrator from parts under the motor pool bench. We rewrite the school rules to include a small winter spacing routine. Kids roll eyes and then adapt. They always do. The carrier captain sends a note the next morning. He reads our attached plan and offers the tug crew for a day to help move refrigerator units to a better spot near a backup generator. He also asks for volunteers from our fence crews to walk his deck and talk about how we rig the skirts and chicanes, because some problems on steel mirror problems on land. We organize a swap day. It looks like nothing to someone who wants television endings. To me, it looks like a navy and a town sharing tricks so fewer people fall. That is the future that works here. We run one more sea trial with the carrier 2 weeks later with the base fully ready for low power. Nothing breaks. No one panics. Kids play cards by lantern in the covered recess. Guards walk the line and call out gaps that do not exist, just to keep the rhythm. The parole board meets and stamps Marta and Jensen as permanent, with their names added to the duty roster and the coupon book like anyone else. Rook flunks his last review and gets 30 more days with a smaller pen and fewer chances to talk. He screams once and then goes silent. The base does not look at him much anymore. We look at the wall, the kids, the lists, the small boxes of strips in the med fridge, and the tug's wake sliding in a curve that will set the bow where it needs to be when the pilot says stop. A week later, the volunteers from the trial come off daily observation with good numbers and a fistful of blood draws that make sense on paper. We do not call it success. We call it progress. Nora writes a summary for the board with no adjectives. She orders another small round with the same limits. We hold a quiet meal in the chow line for the volunteers and their teams. No speeches. A cup of coffee for each, the good kind, and a plate stacked higher than normal. Someone starts a song and stops. Someone tells a joke that only engine crews get. People laugh low and eat with heads bent. That is right. We do a memorial for Admiral Cross at the 6-month mark inside the new Safe Streets room, not on the pier. The chaplain reads his last note, the one about keeping rules and not letting him walk. I add 2 lines. He taught us to hold the line without pretending it would turn into old parades. And he taught us to measure our days with ledgers and drills, not with rumors. Kids sit cross-legged and listen because the room feels safe. A teacher pins a paper carrier silhouette to the wall, and a child writes Ford under it in careful block letters. That sight does more for morale than any engine test. We finish the quarter with a harvest from the greenhouse that fills 4 bins, greens, herbs, a handful of tomatoes that taste like sunlight, and a small fist of strawberries the kids pick and then cut into tiny slices, so a dozen mouths get a piece. We mark our stores up and see numbers inch above the line for the first time since last winter. We will not brag. We will not post banners. We will log it and assign the next rounds of work that keep it true. The inland voice goes quiet for a long stretch. We keep the listening post running and the rules tight. If the voice returns, we will be ready. If it does not, we did not bet the base on a ghost. That is the part I will carry as a win long after the thrill of a box of vials fades. We did not break ourselves chasing a story. We made ourselves better while testing it. One evening, near the end of a clear month, I walk the pier at the same hour I always do, with a notebook and a pencil. The parole crew sleeps on clean blankets with badges hung on a peg. The pen with the extra locks is empty. The captain finished his term and chose to leave at dawn with a week of rations and a small boat. We offered parole inside the fence. He said no. Some men only know how to stand outside walls. He paddled toward the South Channel without looking back. We watched with binoculars until he turned into a shadow and then into nothing. The tide took him where it takes everyone who will not bend. We turned and checked the locks on the fuel yard and logged the time. The carrier runs a light test and then goes dark. The base runs on battery for 20 minutes while the kids count to see if the lights return when I said they would. They do. A small cheer goes up from the schoolroom. Guards smile without showing teeth and then focus back on the fence. A dog barks once at the wind and then settles. The greenhouse glows like a clean aquarium behind frosted plastic. The med ward door opens and a nurse steps out with a bowl of basil. She hands it to the cook with a grin that makes me want to write it down in the ledger under something other than supplies. I settle for herbs to chow. It reads plain. The feeling is not plain. It is earned. We end the night with the simple routine that holds us. Tools on hooks. Weapons cleaned and counted. Water logged. Fences walked. Kids tucked in. Ledger updated. I write the last line and set the pencil down. I glance at the silhouette of the carrier and know that ship is the anchor the world can still see. I look back at the wall and know this base is the anchor we live on. We are not waiting for rescue. We are not walking into the dark with flags. We are building one day at a time and choosing the kind of laws that let kids draw chalk lines in a world that tried to erase all of them. If someone asks me why I wanted this job after the vote, I will not give a speech. I will take him to the fence at dawn. He will see a guard hand a thermos to a welder and point at a tiny gap that will never make the news. He will see a boy run to the chalk map and follow the safe lines without thinking about it. He will see a deck crew uncoil a hose the same careful way every time. He will smell coffee and smoke and bleach and the ocean, and he will hear the ship blink twice to say good morning. That is enough. We are alive. We are steady. We will meet tomorrow with lists and work. The rest can come find us if it wants help. We will listen. We will weigh it. We will decide. And then we will go back to the fence and the school and the pier, because those are the things that keep this place real. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep the stories alive. For now, stay quiet, stay vigilant, and stay alive. Jack's Nightmares, signing off. Until next time, survivor.